Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast, helping higher education marketing leaders share knowledge about learning, strategies, and tactics that are relevant today. See what you can learn today by listening to one of our episodes.
Welcome to the Higher Ed Demand Gen podcast hosted by Concept 3D. If you like our content, please follow and subscribe to us on your different channels. As always, I'm Shiro Otori, your host. And today I'm very excited to talk about a new federal digital accessibility ruling you may not know about, plus starting an AI task force. And I'm very thrilled to speak with Paul Schantz today. He is the Director of Web and Technology Services at California State University, Northridge, or we'll maybe address it as CSUN today, to talk about the topic. So welcome to the show, Paul.
Hi, Shiro. Thanks for inviting me.
It's great to have you, and I believe it's our second time on this podcast, so it's great to have you again.
Always good to be a returning guest.
Absolutely. We like you. I do have an icebreaker that I'd love to ask again, which is, please tell us what you love about higher ed.
Honestly, it's the people and serving a higher purpose that's not necessarily associated with the bottom line. It's about developing people, and that's a mission that I'm proud to be a part of. And I think that most of my colleagues in higher education have similar feelings about it.
Thank you for sharing that. Well, let's jump in real quick. I know you've been on the show already, so maybe just a 1 minute quick background on your role.
Sure. Again, my name is Paul Schantz. I am the Director of Student Affairs Information Technology at CSUN, and I oversee a web application development team and several web applications, along with the associated infrastructure on Amazon Web Services. A couple of those web applications, as you sort of alluded to there, support our students that are served by our Disability Resources Office and the National Center on Deafness, which at CSUN are actually two separate departments. These apps provide academic and testing accommodations for our CSUN students who need them. I also oversee about 50 websites for our division's departments and various programs. I'm also responsible for a student data warehouse that contains a few million records. And I oversee the server infrastructure for our enrollment services areas, supporting operations like the card office, like student photos and this sort of thing. Additionally, the Student Affairs Office of Assessment reports to me, which includes assessment activities, program evaluation, the annual strategic planning process, compiling and publishing our division annual report, which I'm in the process of doing right now. And I also represent student affairs on several campus level technology committees. So it's a little bit.
Just a couple of hats, huh? Yeah. That's awesome. And if you're curious, our previous episode was episode 95. So you can go check that out, where we talk a little bit more about website marketing language and also how you can use card data, student card data for student retention as well and engagement as well. So that's episode 95 if you want to check it out. Well, let's jump into the topics here today. So, Paul, can you tell us what the new DOJ ruling on digital accessibility is?
Well, it's not so much the DOJ. It's a change in the ADA implementation and how people and organizations need to respond to that. And all of this information can be found at ada.gov. You can just do a simple Google search. But the basic aspect of this is that all university digital content, including instructional content, audio, videos, documents, forms, and websites, everything must be accessible by April 24th, 2026. So we have a little bit more than a year to do that. CSUN is pretty well positioned in that regard, but I imagine many campuses are probably scrambling. But individuals are responsible for ensuring that the digital content that they create or maintain, whether it's like flyers or any kinds of forms or documents that you put on your website, it's got to be accessible. And what makes it this different is that it must meet W3C or World Wide Web Consortium, WCAG, that's the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, the 2.1 AA guidelines. So what makes it different is that there's an actual spec that you have to make sure that your content adheres to. So you can measure this. So that's what makes it unique.
Absolutely.
First time that there's been like a technical specification for compliance that's actually been provided by the government.
Absolutely. No, thank you for laying that out. And if you were wondering, there is a separate deadline for those with the size of your state or local government, which includes public institutions and universities. If it's under 50,000 people, the deadline is April 27, which is a little bit, gives you a little bit more time for smaller orgs. But I think CSUN fits in a much bigger org, which is why it's that 2026 deadline, if I'm not
Correct.
mistaken. Gotcha. Cool. Well, thanks for outlining it for us. In terms of your role, where you're, overseeing a lot of different parts of the technology aspect and the website aspects of the campus and campus resources, like how are you looking at this new ruling and prioritizing, or like prioritizing certain project or web pages, or how are you going about just your overall strategy? Because it's a big change.
Correct. Well, a lot of it is dependent on the platforms that we use. So our web content management system does most of the heavy lifting for us. But still, the content management system only goes so far. It is still possible for people who are producing content and publishing it to post things that are not accessible. So there's a fairly significant educational component that's associated with that. So we make sure that we're not posting things that are not accessible, like images that contain lots and lots of text, which would just basically be blank if you don't have the appropriate alternative text or something like this. In that regard, CSUN is particularly in a good space because we have a department that's in our central IT division called the Universal. It's the UDC, the Universal Design Committee, and what they do is they help do a lot of the education on campus regarding, say, email access, very specific, like email accessibility, web accessibility, making flyers that are accessible that you're going to attach to emails and this sort of thing. Also, because CSUN is part of a larger university system, our chancellor's office, which is sort of the central office, they are going to be providing some what we're calling ADA spot checks on a number of web pages for every campus within the system. And the idea here is that these spot checks are going to focus on highly trafficked web pages that are common to every campus. Things like their homepage, like a library homepage, associated students, a disability resources office, which, as I mentioned before, on our campus is actually 2 offices, and financial aid. And these kinds of web pages every campus has, and they're highly trafficked. And so in advance of this chancellor's office spot check of these web pages, our Universal Design Center is actually analyzing those, have analyzed those for us, and they've provided us with reports so that we can address what some of these concerns might be. One of the things that is a little bit more unique is that we also have a chatbot, which we call CSUNny, and that lives on several web pages across our website, like on financial aid. And this is provided by a company called Mainstay, used to be known as AdmitHub. There have been other podcasts about this company and its chatbot in terms of reducing summer melt on other campuses. But we do use this on our financial aid website. Now, because it's a third-party vendor-provided app, it's not something that me or anybody at CSUN can really control. So what we've been doing is we've been aggressively addressing the findings that the UDC provided us with in those reports. So the great news is that Mainstay has been extremely responsive. I reached out to them just a couple days ago with the UDC analysis of those accessibility issues that we found, like a keyboard trap on certain things, like meaning like if you're using a tab or arrow keys, you can get into some of the controls and then you can't get out, which if you are a person with low vision or if you're blind, um, your screen reader gets confused. You can't get out
Right.
of it. There's no way to get out of that. So I'm pleased to say that Mainstay, they responded immediately to my email, and they've shared our findings with their engineering team, and they say they're going to be responding to that. And kind of the cool thing about that is that um, if Mainstay makes those changes, that benefits not just us at CSUN and our students at CSUN, but any customer who's using the application, anybody who's on that platform. So that's going to help tens of potentially hundreds of thousands of students across the country. So that's something I'm pretty excited about.
That's amazing. So kind of like the theme I'm hearing is like making sure that the assets that you own, right? Like the development of the pages like financial aid, your homepage, having those spot checks in place with the larger committee, or if you don't have that, right? If you have something just internally within your org, doing those spot checks, starting off with those higher traffic pages. And for the portions you don't control, like web applications that are developed by third parties, like is it Mainstay, like then making sure that they are a vendor that you like to work with in terms of, are they prioritizing accessibility? Are they responsive? Do they care, right? Just do they care at all as a company, are really important. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And one thing I would be remiss if I did not call out the fact that the Cal State system, we do this as a team, and we have had an accessible technology initiative, what we call ATI, for well over 10 years.
Hmm.
Every campus has multiple representatives that are responsible for the three legs of ATI, and that is procurement, which I have some involvement with respect to software purchases on my campus. There's instructional materials. So that's anything that gets posted. So it could be like the learning management system or any kinds of material that get posted there. And then websites, which of course is the topic that I've been discussing and the thing that I have the most personal familiarity with. So
Got it.
we've got some great people across the entire system who help do this.
That's amazing. And like, I know we've talked about it in our pre-calls before, but never actually addressed it on a recording. Like, what did it take to set these committees up? Right? You said the user, what was it? The UDC. Um,
Yeah, the Universal Design Center.
right. Like setting these committees up that really care about accessibility. I don't think every school has this already in place, right? And so, like, what are kind of like the starting points that helped, that you know of, help form these organizations and groups amongst just your campus and also campus partners?
Well, on our campus, there's been a historic association with accessible technology. We have so every campus has some form of a disability resources office, and they are the
Hmm.
ones. That's kind of where the rubber meets the road. Where if a student who has a disability needs some additional help in their classroom, like maybe they need to have a textbook, converted into Braille, for example, that's something a disability resources office does. So those kinds of functions on a campus have been around for many, many decades. Um, at CSUN, we also have a department called the Center on Disabilities, and they are responsible for putting on an assistive technology conference. It is in Anaheim, really close to Disneyland this year. And this is the 40th year for this accessible technology conference. It has an international presence, and in fact, many people from around the world who attend this conference, they think of it as CSUN. So many people in the accessible technology field, they may not even be aware that, oh, well, CSUN is actually, it's a California State University campus,
Hmm.
but they've associated the conference with CSUN, which is kind of fun. But there's we get a really great attendance. It's anywhere between like 3,000 to 6,000 people. Obviously, the pandemic affected our numbers, so we're seeing our numbers come back up. We're anticipating over 3,000 attendees from around the world this year.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think I read somewhere it is one of, if not the biggest assistive technology conferences in the world as a whole, just like not just with higher ed, but as a whole. So
Yeah, that's correct. There are other
Yeah.
conferences. There's a big one in Europe, but it's not at the same scale as this one.
Yeah. So definitely check it out if you're curious about, what assistive technologies there are, if you're interested in accessibility as a whole. Um, if you can't make it this year, it's or you probably won't since the time this will be posted will probably be in April. Definitely check it out for next year. It's fantastic. Kind of going back a little bit more towards what we were talking about with vendor evaluations. You have your state school system, and you have certain criteria for evaluating vendors. How do you kind of like, and you probably work with your procurement team on this, but how do you go about thinking about adopting a new tool and understanding and making sure that that vendor cares about accessibility and that digital accessibility will be a priority?
It is a process that's been baked into procurement, and
Mm-hmm.
typically, what will happen is, well, the ideal situation is that the person who wants to bring, or the department that wants to bring a particular piece of software on board, they will work with the vendor. They will look for certain kinds of documentation has been done in advance.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of them. One of them is called a VPAT, which is a voluntary product accessibility template. And if a vendor has one of those completed, it shows that they are at least aware that there is a thing called accessibility within technology products. Does not always necessarily mean that their product meets all of the WCAG 2.1 AA guidelines that I mentioned earlier, but it's usually a good sign. We also look at what's called a HECVAT, and this is a product. It's a document that EDUCAUSE had a leading role in developing. It's the higher education. I can't remember exactly what it stands for. It's the evaluation something or other, but it's a
Yes.
long form that a vendor would fill out. And the intent of filling out this form is that all higher education institutions ideally will use this HECVAT form. And if you've completed it as a vendor for one campus, it's good enough for all the other campuses. So that's the idea behind the HECVAT. But what will end up happening is our procurement office will look for those kinds of documents, and they will also run as part of the purchasing process, run it through our Universal Design Center. So it's not just on paper. Like, we actually
Yep.
do test the products. So we have technical people in the UDC that will review that product and make sure that, oh, it actually does do the things that the vendor claims that it does. And like I mentioned before, for example, with this chatbot that we use, we can take those findings, share them with the vendor with the hope that they will actually remediate any issues that we find. Some vendors, they're just so big, they're not going to care. And it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It's like higher education is only a small portion of our business. Although we hope that they will do that, because if it makes the product better for, anybody, it's good, right? So that's
Yep.
that's our feeling on it.
That's great. And I didn't remember this off the top of my head, so I did Google it while I was listening. Is Higher Education Community Vendor Assessment Tool is what HECVAT stands for you, for those of you curious. Okay, well, like I'm hearing some great things right now. So my primary audience for this podcast is a lot of marketing folks, right? Whether that's in comms or marketing enrollment. But these all people do care about digital accessibility as a whole, but they just may not be in the nitty gritty as you are, or but you understand, right? And so, like, let's say I'm a marketing person who's trying to bring on a new tool, right, to help with admissions and enrollment. Um, is it easier for me to have um, these forms, right, like the HECVAT and the VPAT, and maybe like an accessibility statement ready and understand that before I bring things to IT or procurement? Like is that like in
It,
an ideal world, is that better?
it's best if you have given it some thought in advance,
Yeah.
because ideally, with any kind of marketing and communications tool, the goal is to communicate more effectively. And I'll use an example. Our UDC gave a training course on accessible email just a couple days ago. And there are many examples that they share in the PowerPoint presentation that they do. But it just so happened that while I was on the call, I received an email that fit that description perfectly. It was a solicitation for contributions from I'm not going to say who the organization was. It's not important. But they were using MailChimp, and none of the literally all of the information, including the call to action, was in images. And not only was it just like it's not like a banner, it just went on and on and on. I mean, we're talking paragraphs of information. And the thing was, it was really compelling content too. It had a very personal story about, an individual and why you should contribute to this cause. And literally it was a black hole, until I said, show the images with this. And I'm not kidding. It was like, seriously, like 6 or 7 paragraphs of text, and it was all in an image. So at the very least, if you want to convert more people, you would at least want to have like 1 or 2 sentences as alternative text, along with maybe a button with actual text that's readable by any email client. So it was just a great example. It just happened to arrive while I was in a training course about making accessible emails.
Oh, that hurts too, even if the content was good, but you didn't have any alt text. Oh, that's tough because someone spent all that time developing that content, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Wow. That's a great example. Speaking of just like working with vendors, how's it been working with Concept 3D so far?
You guys have been awesome. So things have been great.
That's great.
Well, I mean, I do see the material that you put out on LinkedIn, and you're definitely accessibility forward. So that's good, and it's kind of fun. Like the desk says, accessible maps are important. Convince me otherwise.
Right.
That's
no,
compelling.
I mean, it's definitely one of our Concept 3D's most important company values is making sure that we develop with accessibility in mind. It's not an afterthought, and it's not a separate but equal system either. So definitely important. So I love all those examples you gave. I'm going to share this webpage that I came across yesterday or today, actually. It's all images on the landing page. I'll share it to you. You'll laugh. But anyways, let's switch gears a little bit here. You're just in the starting phases of this about developing an AI task force. AI has obviously been a hot topic for 2 years now. I think higher ed is just finally starting to adopt it, right? And then there's a lot of things you can do from obviously the student perspective, but also from the staff and faculty perspective. We'll talk more about the staff side here. Let's talk about a little bit about what your vision and your school's vision is in adopting AI and where you maybe plan to use it.
Well, this AI task force, it is a campus level. It's a campus level project, and I am just a very, very small part of it. It's being organized by folks in our central IT division and academic affairs. And like I say, it was just created. We had our very first meeting last week. We've got representation from every area on campus, and it's going to run for about 18 months. It's going to be really comprehensive. Some of our initial deliverables are going to be informed by like current use cases or like closely anticipated needs. We're going to be determining some near-term actions that we should take to create agile structures. This is going to sound very jargony, and I apologize for that. But what we want to do is we want to facilitate faculty, student, and staff exploration and adoption of AI capabilities. And we have 3 working groups. One of them is around research. The second one is around teaching and learning. And the third one is around administration and operations. So the one that I'm personally on is the administration and operations side of things. But like with accessibility, education and training is really going to be a big part of the equation. Some of the early conversations that I've had with my colleagues in student conduct have been around the kind of framework that faculty might use with students in their classroom. And one of the early ideas we had was having sort of like a simple traffic light metaphor. So rather than burden faculty with all the details about artificial intelligence, you say, okay, well, if you have traffic light, red means you don't use AI at all in the work. Yellow means it's okay under certain circumstances, and green, have at it. And there's different variations of this kind of a framework. Our academic technology team, they've conducted a number of training sessions around artificial intelligence, including how faculty can incorporate a statement on AI in their syllabus. And this is actually since last time we spoke. There's been some development in that area. So there's a Canvas, that's our learning management system module, that faculty members can incorporate directly into their syllabus. So they can choose the elements of an AI policy that they want to have in their own classroom. So that's been very helpful.
That's amazing. Are there certain goals like within your personal team that you're trying to adopt AI for, or like plan just maybe some ideas even?
Yeah, I think where it's still very early stages, it's going to be looking at using AI for parsing data, particularly engagement data, which is something that is personally interesting to me by virtue not only of the fact that I oversee the assessment office. So we're gathering a lot of data about student interaction across the entire division. But also in my own doctoral research, which I won't get into because you'll have me for an hour talking. But the idea is that we're gathering a lot of data from a lot of different sources, and it will be very helpful to use AI tools to help parse that data in ways that make it understandable for us.
That's amazing. Yeah, I had the light bulb moment just now. You have all the student card data, right? Or I forget the right word for one card data that you have. Millions of data points, probably, right? Every year, millions of data points. How can you parse that data? AI can come in and help you understand that information. So that would be incredible if you get it to work.
Yeah, I mean, from a qualitative analysis standpoint, it's going to be pretty transformational. Google has their Notebook LM tool, which is, I think it's still in beta, but if you have a Google account, you can access that. And as part of, I was just finishing up my literature review a few months ago, and I figured, hey, I'd literally just finished the last article, and I'm like, I'm going to try this and see, how this works. I went through the old-fashioned way, with the article where it just went through the abstract, and I highlighted the things that seemed to be the most relevant to my research. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to upload this PDF into Notebook LM, and it parsed it really, really well. It was, I would say, at least 85% compatible with the work that I had done on this. And on top of that, it generates a series of questions that you can ask it. So after it's parsed the document, it even gives you suggestions about questions you could ask about the document. On top of that, it provides a podcast which takes two completely AI generated characters, and they have a conversation about the document. So it's pretty interesting.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know about that. The AI characters and conversations. I got to check that out. Real quick. So the goal of you using all the student engagement data and trying to cipher the data, what is the ultimate goal of doing this? And I already know the answer, but I want to hear it from you.
Of course. I mean, well, ultimately, we want students, we want to increase retention and graduation rates. That's the ultimate goal. But there are also benefits to the organization as well behind the scenes. So if you're a learning organization, you care about continuous improvement. And it could be that a program that you have been doing for 20 or 30 years just no longer has quite the same impact that it used to. So when you're analyzing and assessing that programming information, maybe what you decide to do is like, okay, well, maybe this program isn't, it's not as good as it used to be. What maybe we should do is shift some of those funds somewhere else, maybe start experimenting with different kinds of programming that might be more effective. And additionally, looking at ways that we can connect students with other kinds of relevant engagement opportunities. So it's connecting different kinds of things. So we have hundreds of different kinds of engagement opportunities for students. And there may be all kinds of findings that we can get from looking at that data.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm just thinking like even like in your student portal, right? Based on the students' classes, major, like maybe the portal can recommend like certain events that are coming up around campus because it's already a lot to try and shift through the hundreds of events. What if you could have one or two catered towards you, and using AI for that?
Well,
That's cool.
exactly. I mean, there's any number of clubs and organizations that are associated with a particular major, and students that do get connected with organizations that are related to their classwork, they tend to do better. Not everybody, but I mean, by and large, they do perform better. So every opportunity that we can to have students find that sense of belonging, it's like, oh, I'm in like, say I'm in cultural anthropology, for example. It's like, okay, well, there's an anthropology club. Well, you would probably be, it would be good for you to be a part of that. I mean, I say that because that was my undergraduate major forever ago. And I was a member of a club that was associated with cultural anthropology, and it helped me. I mean, it definitely created connections that helped me get through the whole thing, get to the finish line.
That's great. Well, I mean, I feel like there's just so much we can do with AI, and even just specifically with how we can better understand and break out data. So I'm really excited for what your specific goals are, but also what CSUN and the Cal State system are going to come up with this AI task force. So I'm really excited, and thanks for covering the new ADA ruling. That's been great to have a podcast episode on that. So thank you so much for joining. I'm wondering where our listeners can connect with you.
Well, if they want and they're just old fashioned, they can connect with me via my email. It's very simple. It's just paul@csun.edu. So, and if you Google me, you'll find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Paul. Thanks for our second round together. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Shiro.